For sure. So first things first, for anyone who needs a quick refresher, Hunter Biden is President Joe Biden's son. And, well, he's been in the news quite a bit over the last few years, mainly due to some legal troubles.
Yeah, I mean, there's his tax charges in California and then the separate gun charges in Delaware.
Right. And just to be clear, he pleaded guilty to the tax charges and was found guilty of the gun charges, right?
That's correct.
Okay, so now we've got that background. Let's get into why this pardon is causing such a stir.
Well, the first thing that really stands out to me is just how broad it is.
Broad. How so?
Well, it's not just about those tax and gun charges he was convicted of. It's worded to potentially protect him from any charges related to actions within a certain time frame.
So even stuff we don't know about yet.
Exactly.
Wow. So it's almost like a, what do they call it, a get out of jail free card for anything that might come up from his past.
That's a good way to put it. And that's actually what's drawing a lot of comparisons to Richard Nixon's pardon.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah, I see that.
If you remember, Nixon resigned while facing potential charges for Watergate, and Ford's pardon protected him from any legal consequences.
Right.
So both pardons aim to protect the recipient from potential charges related to actions within a specific time frame.
That's a pretty controversial comparison, though, right?
Right.
I mean, Nixon's pardon was super debated back then.
Absolutely.
So Joe Biden is basically using a similar approach to protect his son, even though the circumstances are obviously very different.
That's right.
Got it. So this is definitely raising some eyebrows.
Yeah, and it's leading to a lot of debate about presidential power, too. You know, some legal experts are arguing this sets a dangerous precedent, basically saying presidents can shield anyone they want from prosecution.
Which could be especially concerning now that Trump is back in office.
Yeah, especially since he's been pretty vocal about using pardons, particularly for those involved in the January 6th attack.
Right, and he's already drawing a connection between Biden's pardon and his own plans. It sort of feeds into his narrative that the system is rigged and he's the only one who can fight for the forgotten man.
Right. I mean, it's definitely playing into that whole narrative.
Okay, so before we get too deep into the political side of things, let's take a closer look at those charges against Hunter Biden. So we're talking tax fraud and then that legal gun possession, is that right?
Right. So for the tax charges, he pleaded guilty to not paying over $1 million in taxes.
$1 million, wow.
Yeah. And then on the gun charge, he was found guilty of having a firearm while using drugs, which is a felony.
Oh, right, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so these weren't exactly minor offenses, and yet this pardon wipes his record clean, potentially changing how future presidents might use their pardon power.
Wow. So it's a lot more than just a legal issue then. This pardon is sparking a conversation about fairness, accountability, and, what justice actually means in America.
Exactly. It really gets to the heart of the matter, doesn't it?
For sure. So this leads to another question. What does this all mean for the everyday person? Is this pardon, in a way, creating a two-tiered system where powerful people can avoid consequences while others can't?
That's a really good question, and it's one that a lot of people are asking. You know, it really gets to the core of the rule of law and whether it truly applies to everyone equally.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground already, but we're just getting started. There are so many more layers to this pardon and what it could mean for our country. We'll dive deeper into all that right after the break.
You know, it's important to remember this pardon doesn't just come out of nowhere.
What do you mean?
Well, there's been years of accusations, right? All those questions about Hunter Biden's business dealings.
Oh, right. And if his father, then Vice President, and now President Biden was involved.
Exactly.
So this pardon is adding another layer to everything. It's not just the charges themselves.
Right. It's the whole perception of influence and favoritism.
Exactly.
And the pardon itself actually says the prosecutions were politically motivated. It even mentions Joe Biden's opponents, almost like it's saying, hey, we know this was all about politics, not actual wrongdoing.
Wow, that's pretty bold.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's trying to get ahead of any attacks from Trump's administration.
Right.
Acknowledging the political angle right away.
Right.
But that could backfire, don't you think?
Oh, absolutely.
By bringing politics into it so directly, he's basically confirming what Trump and his supporters have been saying all along.
That Hunter Biden was given special treatment.
Yeah, and it plays right into that whole deep state idea that Trump has been pushing for years.
Yeah.
That there's a powerful group working against him and his allies.
Right.
So this pardon gives Trump even more to use against the Bidens. It's just going to polarize things even more.
That's definitely a possibility.
Okay, but let's step back for a second and think about the bigger picture here. What does this pardon mean for future presidential pardons? Does it set a new standard?
Well, that's hard to say for sure, but it's definitely raising some concerns. I mean, if presidents can use pardons to protect their families, no matter how serious the crime, it weakens the whole idea of equal justice.
Right, like there's one set of rules for the powerful and connected and another for everyone else.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous path. If people lose faith that the justice system is fair, it erodes trust in our institutions, and that weakens our whole democracy.
So in a way, this Cardin is about much more than just Hunter Biden, isn't it?
It
It's
is.
about justice and fairness and
Yes.
accountability. All these core principles that are supposed to be at the heart of our system.
Right. And it makes us ask some tough questions about whether those principles are really being upheld.
So what do you think?
Well, it feels like we're at a crossroads. We have to decide what kind of country we want to be. Do we want a system where everyone is accountable no matter who they are, or one where the powerful can get away with anything?
It's a big question.
It is. And that's why this pardon is causing such strong reactions. It taps into those deep-seated anxieties about fairness and whether the system is rigged against everyday people.
There's also this argument that the pardon is an attempt to depoliticize the situation.
Oh, interesting.
By removing the legal pressure on Hunter Biden, maybe the focus can shift away from these accusations of political influence and corruption.
Hmm. It's a gamble, though,
It is.
and there's no guarantee it'll work. Some might see it as an admission of guilt, even if that wasn't the intention.
And how do you think this is going to play out with the public? Will it calm things down or just make tensions worse?
That's really hard to say. We're already seeing such strong reactions from both sides. It's clear this pardon is tapping into some raw emotions and deep divisions in our society.
It's hard to predict for sure. But I keep coming back to this question. What does this all mean for the average person? I mean, how should we even think about this pardon? And what kind of impact does it have on our country?
Well, I think it reminds us we all play a role here. We have to hold our leaders accountable, right?
Right.
We need to demand a justice system that's fair and impartial to everyone.
Yeah, I mean, we can't just sit back and let these decisions happen, right? We need to have these conversations and demand answers.